Hi everybody, this is Tim Allen for the Flint Courier, and today we're going to talk about a mailing that came out from the Drummond Schools that talked about a building project. And today with us we have Superintendent Dean Phillips. So Dean, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Tim.
So, there's been a lot of chatter about this since I think the mailing went out. And let's just talk about what's the initial need. Why did this come up when it came up?
Yeah, I think Drummond is like many of our small communities in the state of Montana where we're struggling to find affordable housing for employees, whether it's businesses in our area. This one's a bit more specific to employees for our school district. And so last year we hired numerous positions. Of course, lots of other communities and school districts have been talking about the need for affordable housing for teachers and school employees. And we found ourselves in the same boat last year where we had teachers who we offered contracts to initially accept those contracts and then back out of those contracts due to the inability to find affordable housing in the Drummond community.
And I think to address the affordable housing thing too, I could be wrong about the specific stat, but I think Montana is either 50th or 49th in the starting salary wage for a teacher. Is that correct?
Yeah, we fluctuate between 48th and 50th.
So, so they're not getting a ton of money here when they start.
Correct.
Not that we're, Beverly Hills or anything.
Right.
But
yeah.
So in looking at this option, so let's talk about what the option was that you guys came up with to build what?
Yeah, so initially the option was to find housing locally. And so we searched far and wide. Obviously, it's an interesting time in real estate in Montana. And there were absolutely zero opportunities to rent housing in our community at that time. Of course, things change and fluctuate. So
sure.
we actually approached a few landowners who had housing that they kept for vacation rentals, and some were willing to discuss some options and some were not willing to, based on making more money as a vacation rental than they could all year as a property rental. And so we were fortunate this year to find housing for all of our teachers. Some of that housing is temporary and it's not long-term, and we don't view that as a solution for this problem. And so our conversations led us down a path of, well, if we can't dramatically raise our starting wage for our starting teachers, which then affects everybody else who's employed, then we need to figure out a way to help with that. And one of those ways is to provide affordable housing for our employees. So
now when you say you searched far and wide, mm-hmm. This is one of the questions that came up. Some people, when that letter went out, they said, well, there's people with empty houses.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what agent are they with? And they said, well, it was word of mouth.
Yeah.
So, clearly that probably didn't filter into your search, and those houses may not have been empty when you guys started this initial search.
Yeah, and to be fair, we did talk to some local real estate agents. We did talk to Alicia Hicks and Nicole Razor, both licensed real estate agents, and so they were helping us search. But a lot of the homes that are vacant aren't for sale. A lot of the homes that are vacant would take just a tremendous amount of work to become livable again because they've been vacant for so long. The other part of that too is we want to be able to have real estate that's close to us, that we don't have to travel to and from to maintain, and so many of those weren't viable options for us.
So you don't have the availability to get something that's already existing, and so you start this project to build a 4-apartment complex.
Yeah.
And looking for land for that then.
Yeah. So initially it was a conversation of how can we provide affordable housing, and the conversation led us back to a few years ago when there was what was referred to as the old green apartments on the corner where the library was, and how many teachers from Drummond started their career by renting those apartments right next door. And so that kind of got us thinking about what if we could provide those apartments and be able to control the cost of those apartments. And so we're really looking not only to build apartment buildings, but we're not looking at that as a profit. We're looking at that as a service or another benefit that we could potentially provide.
Much like the
teachers.
parsonage that is there for the superintendent now.
Absolutely.
That you don't
Yep.
have to use because you live in Helmville.
Correct, yeah.
So,
However, we are renting that to one of our teachers.
Right.
So,
and so, now when you talk about controlling that, another one of the questions that came up is people know that, Park Logging is putting this thing into the middle of Drummond for its workers, and why couldn't they live there?
Yeah.
Well, I think as we discussed, he controls that, and if he's got workers that come in and then you hire teachers and they don't have room, you're back to square one.
yeah, and I think Mr. Park's in the same position we're in. He's trying to find employees, and he can't secure his employees because there's no place to live, and so he's providing that service for his employees as well.
Right.
And it would be great if somebody else would do that for us, but again, I'm not sure that a company who comes in and builds apartment buildings is going to be able to give us a rental amount or a rental fee or a rental rate that aligns to our salaries that we're paying our first year teachers.
So when this all got considered, again, when this letter went out, I was approached and they said, well, how come, when are they going to have a public meeting on this?
Yeah.
I said, I don't know. I said, I don't, that's not a question I know. But as we talked, you've already had that.
Yeah, so we've had multiple school board meetings where it's been on the agenda. And in June of 21, we actually had a public meeting at the library that was pretty well attended. I think there was 25 people from the community down there where we discussed this very issue. And so, actually it was June of 2022.
21st of 2022.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
June 21st of 22. And we discussed this very issue and we were actually coming to the public to hopefully have the public help us generate some solutions. And really not many other ideas were generated from that other than, again, finding local resources that are already available, which it turns out there are very few homes available to purchase or even look at that are affordable and close by. And the second part is being able to control that rental fee and put it into a range where first year teachers will be able to afford that.
So we've kind of danced around the money issue a couple of times.
Yeah.
So what is this project, as you have it outlined right now, what does that look like cost-wise? What would it, not necessarily to everybody else, but what's just that project cost?
Yeah, so our initial numbers, and of course these are just estimates at this time, nothing has been set. We don't have any plans or blueprints of what we're going to build, but just kind of estimating off of building costs, current building costs and labor costs. We're looking at a $1.1 million project. That would give us 4 rental units that we would then secure that money through a state intercap loan. It's a state program that gives loans to nonprofits and municipalities as well as school districts for low interest. And it's a short-term low interest loan that we're looking at. Again, not going to our voters for any increase in taxes for this project.
So I think that's the important question. That's the money question. Is anybody going to see any increase in taxes, fundraisers, donut sales, auctions? I mean, is any of that in the cards to pay for this?
Not at this point. This is a project that we can afford going forward. Just paying back that note with income from the rent, as well as a small amount from our general fund from each school district.
And so is that how it would work then, is that they would, their salary wouldn't be adjusted because of that, or they would
Correct.
just get a rent that they would pay, or how would that?
Yeah, so
pan
their
out?
salary isn't going to be adjusted, but it's just going to be money that comes back to the school for that rent. So
And how long is that note for?
it's a 15-year note.
So in 15 years, you then have a building you own that you obviously need some upkeep on, but you now have a revenue source for the school.
Yep.
That would now bring in stuff that would help the teachers with affordable housing. And I noticed from the letter you sent out, I think there was a little diagram of the room on it.
Yeah.
I think there were, 2 bedrooms in them and a little kitchen area?
We're looking, again, nothing is set in stone. Initial conversation has been a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, under 1,000 square foot per unit, so nothing elaborate, pretty small, but something that maybe 2 single teachers could share.
Or someone with a wife and a child or something like that.
Or a small family could make that work as well.
Yeah.
So we're really interested in being able to hire the best quality teachers we can and be able to retain them. And that's the big issue in Drummond, is where we have to compete with our surrounding communities for the cream of the crop.
Right.
And so we can't pay them more, but maybe if we can give them affordable housing that they can live in, that offsets that cost of living somewhere else, that it's a wash for us.
And so we talked, the land you have is really close by.
Yeah, so we're looking at 2 different lots in Drummond. One that is really appealing to us is right next door to the school across the street. And we've been in contact with the landowner, and he's willing to kind of wait for us to get our ducks in a row and make sure everything goes through. And so that's kind of where we're at with that. The other piece of property is just on Front Street, I believe it is, right across from Parker's, the vacant lot there. The landowners have contacted us about selling that lot to us as well.
Now, when you say across, you mean west of Parker's?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's the owners of the Cotton Patch.
Correct.
Own that. And
Yeah.
I think there was plans for a grandiose quilting thing at one point, which I still don't understand. I understand quilting as a major hobby, but so if this doesn't happen, what does that then start to mean for the education and what you're able to do for kids here at the school?
Yeah, so if this doesn't happen, and there's a couple things we can try again. We can look at existing properties that may end up costing more for the school. And then the other option is go directly to trying to increase wages for teachers. And of course, that's going to happen from the taxpayer perspective.
And so right now in the budget, if you look at those rental fees, plus you've already got that figured into where it's not going to adversely affect programs and whatnot at the school. That's just part of the budget.
Yeah, correct. We had absorbed that for 15 years. It would definitely make our budget a little bit tighter. But with that rental income coming back, we can adjust that as we need to make that work.
So is this a tactic that's being deployed at other districts? Have some other folks done this as well?
Yeah, I haven't necessarily heard it so much in Missoula. I know Great Falls is looking at buying an apartment building. There was on, I believe it was NBC News the other day, there was a video or a segment about a school that had bought a 102 unit apartment building that their employees were in, and it interviewed the employees, and it basically said that's the reason they're working where they are, is because there's housing that's affordable.
Yeah.
And so we see it as a win for us if we're able to do this project, because it's going to attract teachers that maybe we couldn't compete for without housing.
You guys didn't want to go after that hotel at the end of town?
Well, to be honest with you, the discussions have led us all over the place as far as vacant properties, different options. The hotel was discussed as well. Just a variety of all things, and we've landed upon this project as the number one choice.
So what's the deadline for the balloting?
So the ballots went out on October 7th. The deadline to mail those back is October 25th.
So this is not obviously on the midterm ballot, so make sure if you
Correct.
haven't seen it in your mail that they can call the school, I assume, and get another ballot if they need to?
I don't know how that works.
Okay.
All of your ballots should have been mailed to
So
all
make sure you look
registered
through your
voters.
mail.
Yep.
So you get those.
Yep. If you do have questions though, please call the school and I'd be happy to field those questions.
And so let's say the deadline comes and goes, this is a go. When does this get started?
Yeah, so great question. Next steps, we're gonna have to involve some engineers and we'll get started. We hope to break ground this spring and be move-in ready by spring of 2024.
Wow. So it would take a year about to get them?
Yeah, we would like to say it wouldn't, but realistically with permitting and all the hoops that schools have to jump through, it's probably gonna take a year to get those built,
Sure.
a year or more.
Well, I wish you the best of luck. From my reading of it, it looks like a great idea, and I can't imagine that, especially if people are looking to start out in school in teaching after they've gotten their degree, that seems like a real win to be able to have a facility like that where your gas is next to nothing, and
Yeah.
you've got access to a couple of restaurants.
Yeah, walking distance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it becomes a lot easier on duties and stuff too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. We hope it is accepted as well, and again, I think it's a way for us at Drummond School to compete with and compete for the better teachers out there that only benefits everybody in the community.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Dean.
Yeah,
I appreciate
thank
you talking with us today. If you haven't got that, if you can't find it, make sure you look for it in your mail. You may have it stacked on a desk somewhere. If you can't find it, I guess they'd contact Toby.
Toby, correct.
Toby Wetch here at the school, and she can maybe work something out to get you a ballot, but you want to make sure your voice is heard on that. And again, if you have a question, call the school, ask for Mr. Phillips, the superintendent, and he will take care of that for you.
Yeah. Thanks,
So
Tim.
that's it. Thanks for joining us, Dean. We appreciate it. For the Flint Courier, this has been Tim Allen.